Hello Cloud Gurus, and in this lecture we're going to look at launch configuration groups in preparation for our Autoscaling 101 lecture, which is in the next lecture. So if we go into our EC2 instance or our EC2 services console, and what I'm going to do is just go in and delete that web virtual machine that we just created. It's becoming a bit of a graveyard in my EC2 console, so terminate. So that's fine. And now what we want to do is you look down here, you've got auto scaling, and we're going to create a launch configuration. And basically a launch configuration is used by auto scaling to configure how many instances, for example, that you want to create when you do auto scale and how it's all done. So let's go through and create an auto scaling group. So we've got our splash screen here. We just want to go create launch configuration group. So the first thing we want to do is choose our AMI. Now we can use the standard AMIs, or we could use an AMI that we've created earlier. So we might want to use my default web server. And when we come into the practical section of the course where we design our highly scalable WordPress site, we're probably going to use our own special AMI. But for now, let's just use the default Linux instance, and we're going to use this one. So just use T2 Micro. So the launch configuration group, I'm going to call this my web layer. In fact, I'm just going to be a bit pedantic and just call it production web layer. Now you can see here you can request spot instances. We'll just do on demand, and we can select what roles we want to assign to any AMI inside this launch configuration group. So we definitely want the S3 access. We can enable detailed monitoring. At the moment we don't need it, and if we click on the advanced details, you can see here we can change our kernel ID, our RAM disk ID. You don't need to worry too much about that, but what we can do is put in our bootstrap script. So I'm just going to cut and paste the script from the last lecture that we used. And if you remember, this script will simply go in and it will provision our web server and then copy the code from our S3 bucket to this web server. Go through and add our storage. I'm going to use SSD. You can say what security group you want to assign this to. So it's more or less spinning up an EC2 instance. It's all the same prompts that you get, except you don't actually spin one up. You're just configuring a launch configuration. So you're configuring what happens when you do an auto scaling event. So I'm going to use my Launch Wizard 1. And it's giving me a little bit of a warning about the fact that my security group is insecure, but it always does that. So that's fine, and you can go through here and just review your entire launch configurations settings, and I'm just going to hit create launch configuration. Okay, and so now that I've done that, it's asking me to create my auto scaling group, and so auto scaling sits on top of the launch configuration. So I'm going to just pause it here, and we'll do this in the next lecture, but if you have any questions about launch configurations, please let me know.